Hello and welcome to the program. I am Nancy Naji. Today on the program, we will be taking you through the CBN Weekly first, and we will take you through the topic energy. At the just concluded African Economic Congress, there was a session on energy, especially around the power sector in Nigeria. We'll be coming through to you with that in a moment. But let's quickly take a break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. At this point, let me launch the keynote address that was delivered by the Central Bank Governor, Godwin Emefiele, at the just concluded African Economic Congress, where he did speak about how the Central Bank of Nigeria helped support economic recovery or help perhaps facilitate Nigeria's economic recovery from the pandemic. Take a listen.
My delight at being here this morning and to serve as a keynote speaker for this event today, where my remarks will be focusing on the theme Central Bank of Nigeria's policies towards recovery from COVID-19. I'd also like to take this opportunity to commend the leadership of the African Economic Congress for showcasing the efforts of our monetary and fiscal authorities in Africa as we all work together to stabilize our economies following the devastating impacts of COVID-19 on our countries. Ladies and gentlemen, you will all recall that prior to COVID-19 pandemic, the Nigerian economy had been on a positive growth trajectory. Indeed, we had witnessed 12 consecutive quarters of positive growth following the 2016 and 2017 recession, along with significant foreign exchange capital inflows due to improved fundamentals of the Nigerian economy. The GDP growth for 2019 stood at 2.29%, supported by strong growth of 2.5% during the fourth quarter of 2019. Unfortunately, the onset of COVID-19 in December 2019 caused unprecedented social and economic consequences across the globe. In Nigeria, the impact of COVID-19 was evident through several channels. First, the pandemic exposed the inherent weaknesses in our healthcare infrastructure and delivery system. The second challenge we faced was the close to 60% drop in oil prices between January and May 2020, which resulted in a significant contraction in oil demand, revenue shortfall, and a drop in foreign exchange earnings. The third challenge was the withdrawal of close to $100 billion from emerging markets by investors between January and May 2020. The capital outflows heightened pressure on the currencies of major emerging market economies, including Nigeria, and this unfortunately resulted in the sequential adjustment of the foreign exchange rate from about 306 naira to the dollar to about 405 naira to the dollar, or 410 naira to the dollar as it is right now. The first question therefore would be, what were some of the policies undertaken by the CBN as short-term policies to tackle the COVID pandemic? The immediate effects of COVID-19 in Nigeria was felt through the loss of means of livelihood for many households during the lockdown. Food prices were increasing, and there was rationing of available foodstuff in the market, which led to artificial food scarcity in some states. The CBN immediately intervened to cushion the short-term effects of COVID-19 on households and businesses. The CBN intervened through a number of means. One, creating a 100 billion naira targeted credit facility for affected households and small and medium enterprises through our national microfinance bank. Here, what we're seeing is that because of the lockdown, some of those who are what we can call itinerant workers, daily wage workers, who would sell food or different articles on the streets, were in lockdown. Nobody was allowed to move around. And we felt in order to support them, make it easy for them to access some small credits for them to continue to live, I use the word, a gainful life, gainful living. As low as about 500,000 naira was granted as short-term facilities for them to be able to survive as an alternative to being prevented from being on the street to sell whatever they used to sell to earn a living. We felt that there was a need for us to use it to stimulate consumption expenditure. And that was a big reason behind creating the 100 billion naira targeted credit facility for these affected households. Second, we created a 100 billion naira intervention fund in loans to support pharmaceutical companies and healthcare practitioners, and to expand and strengthen the capacity of our healthcare institutions. We also found that as a result of the pandemic, countries that had the advantage of producing drugs, medicines, held on to their drugs. And so we felt, or people who would have ordinarily traveled didn't have opportunity to travel, and we feel that there is a need for us to ensure that we strengthen our health facilities, strengthen some of our pharmaceutical facilities, to be able to cope, not just for now with the impact of the pandemic, but to ensure that Nigeria, being the biggest economy in Africa with its large market, that we're in a position to reposition ourselves, position our health facilities, reposition our pharmaceutical facilities so that we can be self-sufficient in the production of pharmaceutical drugs, very simple pharmaceutical drugs, as well as some health facilities. Three, we created a 1 trillion naira facility in loans to boost local manufacturing and production across critical sectors of our economy. And fourth, we also created the research fund, which is designed to support the development of vaccines in Nigeria. The CBN also intervened in the banking sector to preserve financial stability and to protect jobs during the COVID-19 pandemic. And some of those interventions that we took included: one, granting a 1-year extension of the moratorium on principal repayments for CBN intervention facilities. So facilities that you all know were granted to the banks to grant to people. And we felt that there is a need, because there was a lockdown, that these companies were not making money. And because they were not making money, there's a need for them to grant them a 1-year moratorium on the repayment of their loans to give them time. Second, we reduced the monetary policy rate by 100 basis points from 12.5% to 11.5%. Third, We granted some form of regulatory forbearance to banks to restructure loans granted to sectors that were severely impacted by the pandemic. Fourth, we reached an agreement between the banks and the bankers community to suspend layoff of staff in the banking sector to forestall further job losses and mitigate incidents of unemployment. Five, we reduced interest rate on CBN intervention facilities from 9 to 5%, and that still subsists and indeed will be subsisting till March 2022. Six, we strengthened the loan to deposit ratio policy, which has resulted in a significant increase in loans provided by financial institutions to their banking public. The short-term policies and interventions of the CBN during the COVID-19 pandemic indeed reduced the contraction in GDP during the second quarter to 3.6% from about 6.01% during the second quarter. So what we're saying here is that as a result of these actions that were taken by the Central Bank of Nigeria, yes, we found that when the pandemic struck during the first quarter, whereas most economies, developed or even developing economies, slided into a contraction during the first quarter of 2020, Nigeria pleasantly had a positive GDP of 1.87% during the first quarter of 2020. However, during the third quarter, when the impact of COVID-19 became more intense, Nigeria's output contracted to 6.01%. During the second quarter, we saw output now, I would say we saw a reduced contraction from minus 6.01% to minus 3.6%. So that was a third quarter. Unfortunately for us, during the fourth quarter, we came out from 3.6% to 0.11% in output. Our short-term policies and interventions also led to an increase in investors' confidence in the stock market, because we saw that there was a 40% growth in the all-share index of the Nigerian Stock Exchange between April 2020 and October 2020, and this trend continued up until 2021. This showed that our short-term policies indeed had worked. On the medium-term policies we took, we said in order to build on the gains of our short-term policies, we introduced medium-term policies to rebound the economy and to support post-COVID economic growth in Nigeria. Some of the medium-term policies we introduced were: one, granting of approval of 3 payment bank licenses, which would accelerate the provision of digital financial services by banks and non-bank financial institutions and reduce the need for paper money. 2, implementation of the tertiary institutions entrepreneurship scheme to promote entrepreneurial activities and foster job creation amongst Nigerian youths. 3, supporting the auto gas conversion program of the federal government, which will improve gas-based infrastructure in line with the auto gas conversion program. 4, the creation of the real sector facility sector to engender output growth, value-added productivity, and job creation. The sum of 1 trillion naira has been released to over 269 real sector projects in the country during this period. 5, the creation of the Nigerian Electricity Market Stabilization Facility to provide liquidity support and stimulate critical infrastructure investments to improve service delivery and collection efficiency. These medium-term policies and interventions of the CBN also contributed in lifting Nigeria out of the COVID-19 induced recession. And unsurprisingly, the economy witnessed strong growth of 5.01% during the second quarter of 2021 from the negative growth of minus 6.1% during the second quarter of 2020. This shows that the medium-term policies of the CBN is indeed yielding good results. On the long-term side, the CBN also introduced some long-term policies to spur post-COVID economic growth and to provide a lasting solution to some challenges that hindered economic growth in Nigeria. Some of these long-term policies include: 1, the establishment of Infrastructure Corporation PLC to address the funding challenges in financing the development of critical infrastructure in Nigeria. The InfraCorp will act as a catalyst for growth in the medium to long term while providing reasonable returns to investors. Like you all know, Nigeria has been suffering from massive infrastructural deficit funding problems. And in order to address this on a long-term basis, the president approved the establishment of infrastructure corporation that will operate purely on a private sector basis. They'll be independent. They have been sponsored or they have been established by the combination of the Central Bank, African Finance Corporation, and the Nigerian Sovereign Investment Authority, who will be putting in place a 1 trillion naira in equity and 14 trillion naira will be through debt. As we stand, transaction advisors, KPMG has been appointed. 4 asset managers have been appointed. The board is currently being established. We had hoped that by this 4th quarter, we will begin work. The CEO has been appointed, and we're hoping that during the month of November, latest December, we should see the first set of projects that will eventually kickstart the funding of infrastructure in Nigeria, purely from a private sector standpoint, to help eventually improve the infrastructure deficit that Nigeria currently suffers from. 2, the CBN CPP intervention to develop the human capital needed to build capacity in the financial sector. Through this program, the CBN will produce a critical mass of well-educated postgraduate degree honors holders in the fields of accounting, banking, and finance, business administration, and economics for the financial services industry and the Nigerian economy as a whole. 3, the creation of a central bank digital currency, or the e-Naira, to support the post-COVID economic growth. The e-Naira will increase financial inclusion, improve the conduct of monetary policy, and facilitate low-cost and efficient payments. 4, creation of non-oil export stimulation facility to stimulate non-oil export in Nigeria. 5, you may also have heard about the establishment of Nigerian International Financial Center, NIFC, which we had said within 12 months will debut. They will believe by sometime around January or February 2022, the Nigerian International Financial Center will eventually debut. What this is meant to do is to create a pool, to attract a pool of foreign currency into the country through the International Financial Center. Foreign banks will be allowed in to come and operate under a free trade zone arrangement. All the infrastructure is being put in place. The central bank is currently discussing with some interested parties on properties somewhere in places like Abuja as well as in Lagos. The main hub will be in Lagos with all the infrastructures, while there will be a sub office somewhere in Abuja to ensure that there is a pool of foreign currency that is really attracted into the Nigerian economy to help boost the economy further and make it a strong one, and so as to be able to reposition it to properly lead Africa. 6, creation of the Anchor Borrowers program, which commenced in 2015. The Anchor Borrowers program is aimed at increasing the cultivation of and processing of agricultural produce and to create jobs in the agricultural value chain in Nigeria. The Anchor Borrowers program, like you all know, has cumulatively released a sum of about 790 billion naira to about 4 million smallholder farmers cultivating about 5 million hectares of land across the country, and indeed has helped in reducing the impact that would have occurred on or that would have beset the country if we had not intervened in the area of agriculture. Owing to the success of our short and medium-term policies, we expect that our long-term policies will yield lasting results for the economy. The impact of our policy measures has helped to prevent larger GDP contractions in 2020, as projected by analysts. Unfolding developments continue to indicate that the Nigerian economy will achieve strong growth. And indeed, we've seen both the CBN, the IMF, and World Bank revised the growth numbers for Nigeria for 2021. Specifically, the key macroeconomic outcomes are as follows. GDP. GDP rebounded with a strong positive growth of 5.1% during the second quarter of 2021 from negative of minus 6.1% in second quarter of 2020. This recovery path has continued to strengthen the 2021 as a result of the stimulus support provided by our various policies and interventions. On inflation, headline inflation rate has continued to drop at this time to 17.01% in August 2021 from 18.17% in March 2021. And we're increasing our efforts to control inflation towards the CBN single-digit tolerance range. On reserves, Nigeria's FX reserves has increased to nearly, in fact, to over 40 billion from as low as about 32 billion in March 2020 due to inflows from IMF Eurobond proceeds and complemented by central bank active management on foreign exchange market. And on exchange rate, we've seen exchange rate continue to experience significant pressure here in the various windows. Accordingly, the CBN adjusted official exchange rate from about 306 to about 410 that it is today. And we believe that with all the measures that we're putting in place, whereas we may not expect any massive significant appreciation, we do expect that we should be able to stabilize the exchange rate at the levels that it is right now, so as to give confidence to those who want to do business in Nigeria about the levels at which they can project exchange rate for their various products and their services. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, in concluding my remarks, I'd like to add that the CBN will continue to monitor progress and respond promptly and flexibly to support economic recovery from COVID-19. We will closely watch economic and financial conditions, and we will use our monetary policy tools and instruments to respond as appropriate to pursue our mandate of price and monetary stability. I thank you all for the opportunity to speak to you this morning. Thank you very much. I thank you for your attention.
Welcome back. As you heard from the Central Bank Governor, some comments were made there as regards foreign banks will be allowed to operate in the free trade area. He also spoke about the e-Naira, as the introduction of the e-Naira will help grow financial inclusion in the country. He also spoke about the much-awaited Nigeria Infraco, that is the infrastructure company, the board appointment, as well as the chief executive officer appointment. For those of us that are watching the economy, we are eagerly awaiting that. Let's quickly take another break, and when we return, the program continues. To stay. At this point, let me launch the session on power as regards Nigeria's power sector. It was quite an interesting session, and let's quickly hear from the panelists during that session. A representative from the Federal Ministry of our power, Mr. Gabriel Yehoasese, was there. Sonny Iroche, Chairman, Strategic Alliance Corporate Promotion Company, as well as Engineer B. Membere, Founder, Managing Director of B Energy Consultancy Services. These gentlemen did justice to the topic around the power sector in Nigeria.
So having said that, maybe we can bring in, understand there's some audio challenges by the Honorable Minister. Maybe we can bring in Dr. Iroche at this stage and just talk us through his views around concessioning PPPs and raising the kind of financing, and what type of financing, and what kind of private investments, what kind of public sector initiatives can drive the inclusive growth, and also the kind of risk mitigations and investor confidence, and what kind of things investors should look at, and that government need to do to bring in the right investment into the sector. So, Dr. Iroche, please, you have the floor.
Moderator, this indeed is a bunch of loaded questions, and let me attempt to take them one by one as I was able to jot them down. The type of financing clearly would be desirable equity, first and foremost. And to have equity in the power sector, you need deep pockets of people who are ready to wait a long-term investment. In more developed financial climes, usually fund such things with either long bonds, or in America, what you call Ginnie Maes. That is veterans' long-term monies that are placed for over 30 years. In Nigeria, the longest term money that we have, apart from some of the government bonds, if you look at bank deposits, 1 year, 2 years, but we also have government bonds. Governments can raise bonds to go for this. Well, you can have the normal bonds, and you can also have green bonds that are targeted towards working towards the 2050 Paris climate, net zero climate. That can really be a way of taking the cash flow away from the system. Then, when you talk about risk allocation is based on the fact that, well, you already have takers. In the case of the discos, 11 of them have indeed been privatized. So let us leave that to the owners of those businesses. You have Eco, you have Ikeja, you have Enugu, you have Port Harcourt, you have Yola, you have all of them, okay? So let us leave the ones that have already been privatized. But now, on the government policy, we already have the Electricity Sector Reform Act 2005. Everything is there. The letter is there, but the greater part of what we are dealing with is the spirit of the letter. We signed an agreement in 2018, 2019 with Siemens of Germany. Siemens is one of the biggest and reputable companies in the world. I don't know what has happened to that one. In January of this year, I'm aware that they signed the pre-engineering, and the Siemens deal is supposed to take care of both the discos and the TCN, the Transmission Company of Nigeria, where I was executive director for 4 years. And that has been under the Presidential Power Initiative, which I had written a lot of articles to give kudos to the current administration for going that route of getting Siemens in a PPI schedule, whereby the German government will put down 85%, whereas Nigerian government will put down the 15% counterpart funding. I don't know where that has reached. I think the former German Chancellor Angela Merkel was asked, and she cleverly parried away that question, which gives me the impression that that hasn't happened the way it was planned. Then the funding of power comes from what we all have been talking about. It has almost become a cliche that you must have a cost-reflective tariff. If you have a cost-reflective tariff on one hand, you also now have a service level agreement in place that, okay, if we're going to pay market tariffs, therefore, you also have to make sure you give us X amount of power every day. But it now becomes a chicken and an egg situation. You cannot sell power less than the cost of generation. The numbers will not add up at all. So let us look seriously at NERC, the regulator of power sector, to look at the tariff regime. Because if that tariff regime stays as it is and is not reflective of the cost, power is a commodity like any commodity. If you're a businessman and you're selling cars or you're selling tomato, the cost of production must be reflected in the price of the goods and commodity or services you are producing. Same ditto for electricity. Electricity is a product that has to make profit for the owners. The private investors who put their monies, who borrowed monies from financial institutions, will not sit back and say they are Father Christmas to anybody. It doesn't work like that. There is no Nigerian way of running the power sector. There's only the proper way. And developed countries have achieved it. Other smaller countries have achieved it. There's nothing stopping Nigeria from achieving 24/7 power in Nigeria. I know we are limited with time. Let's now go to the unbundling. You mentioned unbundling, right? The only sector that is still under the purview of government is the Transmission Company of Nigeria, TCN, which controls the national grid. And I know for certain that that NERC signed 2 licenses in 2014, 2 licenses, 1 for transmission service provider and 2 for independent ISOP, independent service provider. So what has happened with that one? I don't know. Maybe the Honorable Minister of State for Power, I saw it's supposed to be here, or whoever his representative is on this panel, should give us a feedback on what has happened to that.
Yes, sir. If I could go further, just based on your experience. So recently, on 2 levels, Lagos State had a stakeholders session, and they said in Lagos, with about 20 million people, using Lagos as the economic and industrial center, epicenter of West Africa, essentially. Lagos says they require, I think, perhaps about 3 gigawatts or today, but maybe in the next few years, they probably require, 5 to 10 gigawatts of power. But TCN is only able through, I think, the AJA 330 and the other one from the Abeokuta axis. It's only able to interconnect Lagos on these 2 transmission lines, which have limited capacity. And so, based on your experience in TCN, how is it that there can be generation wheeled into Lagos that would, because the rule of thumb is that for 1 million people in the working population, you need about 1 gigawatts to be in a developed sort of ranking.
To answer your question, the major Achilles heel of the power sector is improper pricing of electricity. That's the major problem. If we get the pricing right, Nigerians might think they are suffering on the short term, but on the long term, what we are doing today as Nigerians is we are really getting off-grid power by our generators, by our inverters, by all manner of off-grid power equipment that we have. If you monetize all those things, also monetize the health hazard of the pollution that these generators emit. And we are also talking about climate change, 2050 net zero emission. So when you put all those things together, Nigeria is in a cul-de-sac. It is a tough one for the country that needs serious leadership. Leadership is very key to understand. I hear people say, oh, they want to run for president 2023. None of them even understands the power sector. They don't know the difference between kerosene and gas. I'm sorry to say that. So we need serious leadership in the power sector. We need serious leadership in the country to understand the enormity of the challenges of the power sector.
Right, sir. Thank you very much. It's very thought-provoking points, and maybe we'll.
I hope I was able to answer some of your questions because
you did. Although I obviously would have loved to talk about the need to also have options. If Siemens not working, we have AFDB, we have the Japanese in JICA, and all other options. But I don't know.
Sorry. AFDB will give you money. This year, as finance director, executive director, we had about 350 million from AFDB. We also had 150 million from Agence Développement Français. It's not the money. It's not the money from all these agencies. It is the commitment for us to know what we are supposed to do, to know the regulation of the industry, to make sure that if, as a banker, if I give you a loan, I'm not looking at the asset you pledge. I'm looking at the mode of repayment that is generated from the cash flow of the business. So if we throw billions of dollars towards the power sector and we don't ensure the repayment, it doesn't make any sense. JICA, no JICA, AFDB, AFREXIM, you can bring all the banks in the world. If you don't look at the structural defects in the value chain of power, we'll be throwing money after what's not working.
All right, sir. I don't know if Barrister Gabriel, the Special Technical Assistant of the Honorable Minister, whether he's online, or Engineer Abiy Membere. If they're online, please signify. We would like to please tap into your various wells of knowledge and share in this very very exciting conversation we're having.
I would always want to be discussing, especially on the upstream sector. My senior brother has talked about the financing on the power sector. Domestic gas sustainability is a strong function of finance. How much fund can you inject into it? In our own climb, I think a lot of efforts have been put in, especially to fund the infrastructure. One of those key infrastructure financing years back is the OBOB pipeline that will be able to move gas from east to west, west to east. That project started some years back when I was a GED, and it is at the advanced stage of completion. Until such a huge infrastructure is set in place, it will be difficult for us to achieve a sustainable domestic gas in any country. The second key project that underpins sustainability of gas is the AKK, because it's easier to transport gas through pipeline than using the LNG or any compressed method. AKK was set up way back 2012, 2013. It's also at advanced stages of funding. However, I really don't know at this stage what the financing situation is. The reason why I said that is the initial design was to ensure that, yes, if you have a huge gas in the east, which is in the east, I mean from Bayelsa all the way to Calabar, compared to when you have it from the west, from Delta all the way to Benin, the way the Niger Delta is structured, eastern and western Niger Delta, you'll be able to move gas freely from one area to another. So that infrastructure is key. Secondly, there's also an infrastructure, gas infrastructure project that is designed to move gas to the northern sector. Like what you are going to experience in the power sector, we try to avoid it in the upstream sector. You don't generate power in AFAM and then send it to the national grid before you redistribute it. That's waste of energy. So with gas, what we want to do is move the gas straight to where the power generator is. And it is a lot easier than using a compressed gas and then decompressing it before you utilize it. So until these key natural gas infrastructures are in place, it will be difficult for us to have a sustainable domestic gas supply in country. With respect to clean energy, to cooking, yes, LPG distribution has been growing steadily. I think this is also why we need the government policy towards how we can continue to increase the LPG supply to those areas that are still locked in with firewood and kerosene. But the key here is government have to come up with a dedicated LPG plan. There are times we have to have a flexibility or a compromise between profitability of export versus local utilization of LPG, because the spin-off effect on our GDP will be higher compared to when we export. Now, with respect to local content on renewables, one of the key challenge here in Nigeria is there are no researches and financing of research projects. If you have to do solar, virtually almost everything apart from the cable is imported into the country. So yes, you have the technologies or the skill set to install and manage it, but to manufacture even the solar panels will require something that we do have, but we've not developed it to a point where we can develop our own panels, one way or the other. So yes, it's an area that is growing fast, but we have to look for a way to be able to reap the benefit, if possible. A policy for us to bring in knockdown parts of the panels, install them in Nigeria and use them. It will create the necessary jobs that we require to move the economy. With respect to wind, and we have the enormous resource with respect to wind. The entire Niger Delta and the offshore environment is all wind. But as I said, yes, one key thing is data and information that we require to be able to design our own. Initially, it's going to be a bit difficult, but this is 21st century. If you can't design, you can copy. So government policy of encouraging wind as a source of renewable energy is something that I would say it's long overdue, because we have our coastline or offshore lines that are so huge that we can do a lot of things. If for nothing else, copy the North Sea model. I think with respect to financing, yes, we've utilized the PSCs. They are matured with respect to what we use them for. We developed the PSC type model even in the JV with modified carrier and all sorts of names. And currently talking about technical and financial services type agreement. These are all financing instruments to develop upstream hydrocarbon sector. All these are still in existence. More will still come as we look forward to the divestment of the majors between Shell and Mobil in the nearest future.
No, just quickly, in view of the time constraint we have, the moderator mentioned a number of things: service-based tariff, energy mix, investment in the sector, and all of that, COP26. I will just try and make a few comments. As you are aware, the present administration is pursuing very vigorously all policies that will lead to Nigerians enjoying adequate, safe and reliable and affordable power. Now, currently, the surface-based tariff that has been introduced is, from the angle of the ministry, it is, sustainable. It was targeted at achieving improved service quality. And we have reports that we have received indicate that this is being followed and service is improved. And we are hoping that with the service level agreements that have been put in place, compensations also will be paid to customers where discos fail to meet, the performance targets.
I seem we had lost the Honorable Minister's representative.
I hope it's not power failure.
I was going to say that.
Well,
it is lack of gas. It is lack of gas.
Hello. I have no comments to those two remarks.
So we have enormous gas. Our asset Niger Delta is so matured. Because of the maturity, you produce more gas as the wells get matured. So gas production is gas supply is not an issue at all.
So why are you flaring gas?
If you have so much gas, the question I wanted to ask is, so nobody goes to, okay, Minister is back. Sorry,
yes.
Sir.
Yes. Now, quickly on removal of subsidy. This is ongoing. And if we recall, the Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, recently at the opening ceremony of the Nigerian Association of Energy Economists, I think that was as recent as July, he gave the indication that the subsidy will be fully removed by next year, that's 2022. And so we can confidently say that this process is on course and the government is determined to put everything in place to ensure that subsidy in the power sector is fully removed by 2022.
Yes, sir.
Now, on COP26, you are aware that as party to the Paris Agreement, clearly Nigeria also subscribes to the global efforts to remove emissions, and the current plan is to ensure that by by 2030, as much as 47% of emissions is achieved. Reduction in emissions is achieved. And this has implication for the power sector, because as we work towards, renewable energy and more efficient, ways of utilizing energy, emissions produced by fossil fuels and generators will be removed, and that will improve the environment substantially. And on the issue of decentralization, you know that the government is working hard to ensure that policies that are targeted at off-grid and mini-grid are pursued vigorously, and REA is doing well in this area. You are aware of the energizing education programs, which targets at providing off-grid power to education.
That's the much we can take on today's edition of the program. Thank you all for joining us. I am Nancy Naji. Continue to be your best in whatever you find your hand doing. Also be the change you want to see. Like Michael Jackson said, look at the man in the mirror. You are the man in the mirror. I am the woman in the mirror. I'll see you all again next time. Bye now.